legendary Hall of Fame pitcher Jim Palmer. Jim, what a great day Saturday was, the celebration of Cal Ripken Jr., 21-31, the walk-off win at the end, but also it was a day that had a bit of sad news. We lost a great one, Davey Johnson. You played with Davey from 1965 to 1972, appearing in 4 World Series. What can you say about Davey Johnson?
Well, you know, we both came up the same year in '65, as you mentioned, and you know, the next year, you know, we had Paul Blair was on that team, Eddie Watt, Andy Etcheburn, a lot of young players. I mean, I was 20. I think Davey's a couple of years older than I am. But we, you know, we kind of grew up not only as baseball players, but we raised our families here in Baltimore. He loved golf. I loved golf. Davey always, you know, I always knew he's going to be a manager because he would trot in from second base, and Dave McNally's pitching, who was a great left-hander, won 20 games for us 4 times, and Davey comes in one time after Mac, you know, tries to throw a ball in the corner, goes to the middle, and the guy hits a home run, and he says, Davey, or, you know, Mac, have you ever heard of the variable chance deviation theory? And McNally goes, what are you talking about? He said, well, you know, because Davey Johnson was a mathematical major at Texas A&M. He goes, well, it's a mathematical theorem. If you're throwing the ball for the corner, why don't you just throw it down the middle? Maybe it'll go to the corner. And, of course, Dave McNally says, just go back and play second base. So when he came in, I said, Mac, what was that about? Because, you know, his nickname was Dum Dum because he was really smart. You know, I had a lot of writers call me yesterday, and I said he was smarter than your average second baseman. But he won Gold Gloves. He played on, as you mentioned, 4 World Series. And we were lifelong friends. And then, you know, when he became a manager, not only here, I could second guess him because I was doing Monday Night Baseball. We did a lot of, you know, Met games. So, you know, he was stubborn. And, you know, it's funny, we'd have conversations, and because we were teammates, I'd go into his office, and I would say, do you ever second guess yourself? He said, well, you know, Everett Bennett Williams once told me, you know, when I asked him who the most, you know, impressive woman, he said Eleanor Roosevelt. And, you know, and Ed Williams said, well, why? And Davey said, well, why? And he goes, no eyes, no R's. And he said, that's the way I manage. You know, you make a decision at the time. You figure it's the right decision, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And you go home and you have a good night's sleep. You don't second guess yourself. So, you know, Davey was headstrong, but, you know, he had over 1,300 wins. And, you know, he won 56% of the games that he managed. And he's the only guy with that kind of winning percentage with that amount of wins that's not in the Hall of Fame. And I would imagine people are going to recognize, hopefully, and really sadly, once somebody passes, you kind of reflect a little bit more on what he's been able to do. And again, other than maybe Joe Torres, as a player and a manager, he had the most effective anybody that ever ended up as a player or manager in the Hall of Fame.
I remember you doing a Monday Night Baseball game where the Mets were playing, and you told a story of how Davey used to try to influence the lineup with Earl Weaver.
Well, Davey, you know, like I said, Davey always thought he was smarter than not only Earl, but myself. But again, that's what, you know, we had so many characters, and Davey was one of them. And, you know, he was a smart guy to come to spring training, and, you know, and sometimes he wouldn't be in the best shape. Not only would he come 10 pounds heavy, he would wear a turtleneck, and it made his neck look even bigger. So, and then, you know, we're playing the Senators, and Ted Williams is the manager, 1969. They come down to Miami, and Ted's, you know, always wore the big outside jacket, and he comes out, and he's got a bungo in his hand, and he walks up to home plate. All our hitters run up to home plate to see what Ted Williams had to say about hitting. You know, hey, get a good pitch to hit, preferably a fastball. And he said you got to have a 6-degree upswing. So all year long, Davey would be going. We go 5.5, 8. You know, and he was looking for the perfect swing. But again, great player. And I mean, just think about what he was able to do. He left here in '72. He went down to Atlanta, and you know, he got to play with Frank Robinson, one of the greatest players ever. He goes down to Atlanta. Guess who he gets to play with? Hank Aaron. Davey hits 43 home runs, 42 as a second baseman. Darrell Evans, I think, at 41. Hank hit 40. At that time, was the only 3 teammates that ever do that. So again,
launching pad.
Well, I mean, it was the second highest altitude ballpark other than you know, Colorado. But again, you still got to hit it. And Hank taught him to hit the inside pitch fair, because Davey, great golfer, had really quick bat. He'd hook balls foul. Now all of a sudden he's staying inside it. And again, you know, Hank Aaron, I think if Hank told me something as a hitter, I might have to listen.
If you had one final word for Davey, and he was right here, right now, what would you say to him?
Well, I'll get teary. You know, that I loved him because you know, we shared so many great times, you know, trips to Japan after we lost 2-1 in Game 7. So, you know, this is, I guess, part of the journey. You know, everybody talks it's not the destination, it's the journey. Well, the journey's not over for me, but for Davey. And, you know, his lovely wife, Susan, I mean, she texted me yesterday morning and saying, you know, before you hear about it, Davey passed away. So, again, you just lose a dear friend. And, you know, you had so many things in common, and we were all able to be in our first World Series, win our first World Series, and just a lot of special moments.
Thanks a lot, Jim.